Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program produced by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth for posterity. Today we have a special type of guest who is not necessarily a Wadsworth native, but she has had such an impact in Wadsworth and she's going to be leaving us now pretty soon. So we're going to interview her for posterity. And this is Janet Griffing, who is the person who has done all of the advertising and the marketing and all of those good things for the library in Wadsworth. And one of the nice things about about Janet is that she lives in Medina, and Wadsworth is the only community in Medina County that does not belong to the Medina County Library Board.
This is true.
So we had a little bit of a shall we say, a little negative feeling about that, but never anything negative about Janet's function and her worth here in Wadsworth. Janet, welcome first and foremost, but secondly, I want to say people know you as the spark plug in the library. But we would like to know about this spark plug in the library from, shall we say, well, let's not go back to prenatal, but
thank you so much.
From where you've been, from a little girl to where you are right now. Who
Really?
are you? Who is Janet Griffing?
Who am I?
Yes.
Who am I?
Names and all that kind of
Names and everything.
Right.
I was born in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is out east in Lehigh County.
Very heavily Pennsylvania Dutch.
Extremely heavily Pennsylvania Dutch. It was spoken in my grandparents' household, but only when they didn't want me to know what they were talking about. But I heard it. I heard Pennsylvania Dutch spoken. And my mother can still speak a little tiny bit, but it was used to keep little children from understanding what the grown-ups were talking about. So I was born in Allentown. I was the first of two children. Born in the Allentown Hospital, right across from the fairgrounds. And so not quite prenatal, but we're getting there. Okay. And my father at that time, he was a salesman. And he sold tractors and farm equipment to farmers. It was funny because he had an English degree from Muhlenberg College.
Oh, really? From Muhlenberg? So when did he go to Muhlenberg?
He would have been in Muhlenberg from like 48 to 50.
My brother taught there at that time.
40. Oh, really? Really? Oh, it's too bad Daddy's not alive, or I could ask him.
My brother taught Spanish there at Muhlenberg.
Really, at Muhlenberg? Well, that's where my parents met. My mother was a nurse in the student clinic, and my father was a student. So it would have been late 40s, because I think they got married in 51 or 52.
Right, and the actually, he met his wife at Muhlenberg as well.
Oh, neat. Okay. Oh, that's I never knew this.
She taught speech, and he taught Spanish.
Well, that's very cool. I have to tell my mom.
Of course, both he and she are dead now. But,
yeah. I'll have to tell my mom that. Anyway, again, your brother.
Frank Carino.
Frank Carino. Isn't that neat? We don't have any yearbooks or anything at home. Well, anyway, my father sold tractors, International Harvester.
Well, that's my passion, tractors.
Tractors? No, I didn't know you had a thing for tractors.
I have 3 of them.
That didn't last real long, but that took us to southern New Jersey eventually, and so I grew up in the part of the Garden State that was actually still in gardens. I grew up amongst some of the fields and farms that were part of the Birdseye Company.
Oh, wow.
And I also grew up in a part of southern New Jersey where some of the Japanese had been interred during the Second World War. And in fact, our family dentist was Japanese and descended from people who had been interred. If people don't know about that, they may not realize what the United States did after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Well, you can tell this story, but they basically moved the Japanese citizens of the United States away from the shores, away from the coasts, and into camps. And
most of the camps were in the west, but we had some in the east.
There were some in the east because they worked the farms. They worked some of those Birdseye farms. So I grew up. I can't remember which ketchup company it was, but Bridgeton had one of the ketchup companies, and in the summertime you'd smell the ketchup cooking. It was pretty wonderful. Now I live in Medina where you smell the candles from Root Candle cooking, but grew up in ketchup company. So I grew up basically in southern New Jersey, and got to the shore once a year and that kind of thing. And graduated from high school there. Was always interested in journalism from the time I was in high school. I worshiped my English teacher, who was the journalism advisor and that kind of thing. Edited the school newspaper my senior year, the whole
What high school would
bit.
it be, Jen?
It was Pittman High School
Pittman
in
High
Gloucester
School.
County, New Jersey.
Gloucester.
So I grew up about as close to Philadelphia as Wadsworth is to Cleveland. So I grew up in, what do they call, the Philadelphia statistical metropolitan area,
Right.
that kind of, yeah. And so Philly was just across the river, but we didn't go much. It was funny. I was 11 before I saw the Statue of Liberty.
Oh.
It was like right there, but we just didn't do that kind of thing. School trips would be like to the Franklin Science Institute and the Natural History Museum and the Art Museum in Philly. We would take class trips there, so we were close enough to Philly to do that. We were looking at journalism schools for college, and we looked at Kent. We looked at OU, and we looked at University of West Virginia and North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And my parents and I drove out here in the summer of '71 looking at schools and started at Kent. And I think, it was a nice campus, everything was fine. I think my parents were a little taken aback because the student who was giving us our tour asked them if they wanted to see the bullet holes in the monument,
right.
because what was it, 2 years after the
1960, yeah.
yeah. So we got down to OU, and we just fell in love with Athens. Just simply, all of us just went, all that Georgian architecture, all those bricks. Gee, Athens is nothing but bricks. And fell in love. Walked into the school on a summer day, and one of the professors was available, and the man just simply sat down and started selling the school. And it was wonderful. I loved Athens, and it was my first introduction to Appalachia. It was, my first big trip away from home kind of thing. And I had a wonderful education at OU that, when you think about it, that OU education, I graduated in '76, I'm still using that degree.
Wonderful.
I still use that degree every day. So we got our money's worth. Met my first husband. He worked for the state of Ohio. I got a job right out of school, with the Ohio EPA, doing public information. So writing brochure copy, interviewing the scientists with EPA, writing brochure
that would
copy.
have been what year? 74?
76.
Or 76?
76, I was there from April till September of '76. And then my husband, who had been working for the state for a while, kind of wanted to come back here. He was born in Ashland, raised in Lorain County, and he wanted to come back up north, saw a job opening in Medina. So we ended up in Medina. He was with the county planning department.
In Brunswick, wasn't he?
He was with the county planning department until that department was folded by the county commissioners. And if you're asking me for a year, I'd say 81, in that range. And Brunswick created a position for him of development director, and so he went up to Brunswick. He was with Brunswick for 21 years. So I've always had my foot in all three cities, sort of. When I got down here, then I had pretty much covered Medina County because I knew Brunswick fairly well, because I was at the time married to a Brunswick bureaucrat. For want of anything else, and and we lived in Medina, and then I was down here. So I really kind of have been all over the county in that way, and had our children. I have 2 boys. David is 34. He has a lovely wife, Amy. I wish I had brought pictures. I have 2 wonderful grandchildren. Molly just turned 5, and Jack will be 2 on the 26th of this month.
26th of this month. Now, don't forget anybody's names, because you will never hear the end of it.
I'll never hear the end of it. So anyway, all right. So we have David and Amy and Molly and Jack. That's my first son. My second son, James, he's 29. He sadly has turned in his key at Whitey's Army Navy. They're selling the business out from under him. He worked for Whitey's with a small stint somewhere else. He was with Whitey's about 12 or 13 years at the store in Medina. And he was just an avid military history interest. He was begging them to hire him when he was 12. Really? And he just begged. So he was with Whitey's a long time. He's also very, very involved with community theater and with the theater program at the high school and with the competitive show choir.
Oh.
He designs and builds set for the show choirs. He trains the tech crew, the kids who crew, and they get judged at the competitions. The crews do.
That's right, they do.
So he has received a trophy for his set design. His crew has taken first crew at a couple of the competitions. So, and he calls them his kids. He just loves that age group. You know, now that he's getting to be an old man of 29, almost 30.
Absolutely,
you know?
right.
But right now I haven't seen him in about a week because they're building set for the Cameo summer show, and they're doing Rent this year, which is kind of a modernized La Boheme. And it's not typical for Cameo because they usually do a family-friendly show. I was in their production of Music Man and My Fair Lady, and I've forgotten what else I did. And Rent is a little more adult in theme, but he designs and builds all the set, and then he works the ropes. When they did Peter Pan the other year, he was taught how to fly people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The
rigging company came.
That was really something.
Yep. The rigging company came and taught everybody how to get into the harnesses and everything, and then James actually got to fly people. He was thrilled. David, I should have said David's career. David is the assistant used car manager at Ganley Honda. And yes, we all drive Hondas. Every last one of us in the family is driving a Honda of some kind or another. And you know, I even have a Honda lawnmower. So I divorced and then remarried almost 2 years ago. My second husband, Steve Laban, is the DNA analyst for the Lake County Crime Lab.
Now that's something extraordinary. What does he do?
Very different. He catches bad guys through science.
Now, has he ever done a DNA of you or anything like that?
No, This is just crime scene.
Oh, crime scene
thing.
stuff. And
So
you
he'll
have
go
not
out.
committed any crimes. So
Pardon me?
You haven't committed any crimes, so that you
But we
obviously...
won't talk about speeding and
No. That's not
okay.
a crime.
Okay, as long as we're not talking about that. He has done crime scene analysis, but mostly he's in the lab. And the investigators who go out to a crime scene in Lake County, bring back the samples, and he analyzes them to identify perpetrators. And he's one of the good guys.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've never heard of anyone who did this kind of work. I knew that it happened, but
Well, you don't watch CSI on television, huh? Or NCIS. These are television shows that are about crime analysis for the most part. CIS in particular.
I'll have to look into those.
Yeah. But he commutes every day from Medina to Paynesville, which is it's a haul.
Now, he did not start out commuting from Medina to Paynesville.
He lived in Lake County.
He lived in Lake County. So then one of the nice byproducts for him was to move about 55 miles away from his work.
Exactly right.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
No.
I always tell everybody he loves me.
He has to love you to do
He
that.
loves me because he gets up on 271 every day and drives an hour and 15 minutes.
And that's a horrible drive at that time of the morning.
It's not fun.
No, it's not fun at all. We go there somewhat frequently, and it's a long drive.
Yeah.
I don't care where you go on 271, it's a long drive.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned something here that piqued my interest. You said that you were in some of the productions. Do you do some of them? Tell me about that.
I haven't done theater now in a while because it kills a summer. I mean, those cameo productions, it kills a summer. And if you have gardens and grandchildren and things, you know, it takes all your time. You're in rehearsal.
What part did you play?
Let's see. In Music Man, I was a pick-a-little lady.
Oh.
Pick a little, talk a little, pick a little, talk a little, pick, talk a lot, talk a little more. Yep. Yep. And the, 1 Grecian urn, 2 Grecian urns,
And you sing.
that kind of thing. I do. I started taking voice lessons when I was in about 5th or 6th grade. And I sang all through high school and college. I've done Medina County chorus, but my preference is for oratorio work, not modern work or contemporary things. Excuse me. And my father had been a choir boy at St. Thomas Episcopal Church on 5th Avenue in New York.
Wow.
Before he went to prep school.
Wow.
So I come from a family of singers. He sang for the Rockefellers, you know,
No
fancy,
kidding.
high church, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think of myself as a church singer. I oratorio and choral music of that kind is what appeals
It's
to
my
me.
favorite too.
And what is, I have the voice for that.
Right.
But I can sing show. I mean, if I'm in chorus, you know, in a chorus, I can certainly sing. You know, what I can't do is dance. So they always put me in the back row, you know, on stage. I learned to waltz doing My Fair Lady, but it was not great.
That was it.
It was not good. And I've done, what else did I do? I did Little Abner. I swear I've done 4 shows.
What were you in Little Abner?
I was one of the scientists. They liked me for one of the comedic roles, and so what would have been a male part, they made a female part, and I was one of the scientists. Had a good time with that. I did Shakespeare on the Square too. We did Midsummer Night's Dream when the Stage Left Theater Company did Shakespeare on the
Stage
Square in
Left, right.
Medina, and I did that too. I had a role. I had a role that was typically male, and they just.
Now you
know, had me do it.
garden, you go to the library, you read, you sing, you don't dance.
No.
Is there anything you don't do besides not dance?
Well, yeah, I can't change a tire. I mean,
Well, if you
me-
can't
in
change
my
it-
mind, I can change a tire. I just don't know if I have the upper body strength to release the nuts.
Well, if you can't change a tire, what good are you?
Exactly so. That's why I have a AAA card.
That's exactly
I don't have
right.
to worry about it.
Now, from all of these wonderful things that you have as a background,
Okay.
how did you get into marketing, since you are obviously musical, obviously artistic,
Thank you.
and are obviously very bright and a journalist, but how did you get into marketing?
How to get into marketing? Well, you know, the problem is that we don't define marketing correctly because I don't have a marketing background, a true marketing background. But I know certain elements of how to market because what marketing really is, it's not PR. This is what I tell. I've also briefly done lectured workshops over at Kent in the library school. So this is what I tell the students. PR, the things that we do under public relations are tools that we use that are related to the marketing plan or the marketing that we're going to do. But what marketing really is not so much me telling you about what I have, what service I have, or whatever it is I'm trying to sell. Marketing is me saying to you, what do you want? Analyzing what the needs are and figuring out ways to fill those needs. Looking at things like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, what they call SWOPs. Doing a lot of analysis, doing a lot of counting. You know, something that would show you the difference between PR and marketing is we may have a program at the library. If I'm looking at marketing, I'm counting how many people attended the program, and then I'm asking them, how many of you found out about it from the Gazette, how many from the Post, how many from posters in the library. That's the marketing part of it. I'm measuring, I'm setting goals. I learned that. But the first time I did any kind of library promotion was when I worked at Medina, because I was at Medina for almost 9 years.
At the library in Medina.
Excuse
What
me,
did
yes.
you do there?
I initially was the bookmobile librarian when I first joined them in January of '79. Before
Driving
I
the
had
bookmobile and everything?
No, I was the librarian, so I didn't have to drive, but I got taught to drive, double clutch, on a thing as big as a fire engine.
Right.
I was not the driver, but I got taught to drive, so in case I had to move the truck for any reason. But I worked with the kids. We went around to the county schools, and I would work with the kids finding books. And I did that. I spent my whole first pregnancy on the bookmobile, which I always say is why my son is the way he is. And then when I came back from maternity leave, I was in children's services part-time. And then one day I said to the director, I said, you know, I think we ought to be sending out press releases. I think we ought to be doing more outreach, telling people what we have. And I created the position in Medina.
So
I
you
was the
actually
first
had
one.
a marketing position at Medina?
A communications position in Medina. When I
at,
left there,
Medina
that's what I was
Library.
doing.
Now, who was the director at Medina at the time?
When I left,
Yes.
Bob Smith.
Bob Smith. Now, I worked with Bob Smith for quite some time. I was on a couple boards with him. He's no longer there, obviously.
No, he's been retired for quite a while.
He's retired, much younger than I am. And he's retired already. Well, now, You came to Wadsworth, and this is where the story begins, where we were going to try to...
I was going to say that we've taken the long road around.
Well, we have to find out who you were before
Well, this is true.
we can find out what you did or why you were here in Wadsworth. When did you come to Wadsworth?
I wanted to leave Medina. I mean, I wanted to leave the library. And I was looking for freelance opportunities. And here I had this background in publicizing libraries. It made sense to me to come down to the other library in Medina County and say, I'm available, would you like me to do something for you? And the director then at Wadsworth was Eileen Flowers.
Eileen Flowers.
Who subsequently went on to North Canton. Right? Right, yes, North Canton. And Eileen said, when you are well and fully gone from Medina, then come down and talk to my board and, we'll talk about it. And I made a pitch to the Wadsworth Library Board at that time. This would have been winter of 1988.
1988.
Yeah, I had to think about it. Winter of 1998. And they agreed to bring me on a per project basis to do whatever it was that Eileen felt needed to be done. So for the first summer or two, I worked with the children's librarian, getting the room ready for summer reading club, writing press releases about summer reading club
Who
programs.
was the children's librarian?
Eloise Williams.
Eloise Williams.
And she was a long time library employee at
Right.
Wadsworth. Excuse me. And I worked with her for a couple summers. And then Eileen called me and said, we've been given a sum of money by the Brenneman Family Trust to do whatever special project I'd like to do, meaning Eileen, would like to do. And what she dreamed about was a live concert series. She wanted to do 12 weeks of live music at the library on a Sunday afternoon. And I said, sure, okay, great. I had not a clue. I mean, I had not a clue how to go about finding 12 musical acts, not a clue. But sure, okay, I'll try to find a way to make that happen. And somebody told me once that I should never have confessed to this, but what the heck, I mean, you you do what you have to do.
You have to do that, sure.
I got out the telephone book. I got out the Akron phone directory, and I started reading under music or musicians or whatever, and I stumbled upon the Akron Federation of Musicians,
Right.
the Union Hall in Akron. And I called them on the phone, and you know who it was?
Who was it?
It was Mike Hadges,
Oh,
whose
right.
son, Steve
Hadges,
is director,
Band director here at Wadsworth.
Yep. Well, it was Mike Hadges, who is since deceased. But Mike, I said, is this who I would call if I was trying to find me? Yeah, absolutely. We're your people. You're in the right place. Oh, thank you. And not only did he help me get acts lined up, but he at that time had the capability of getting grant money from ASCAP in New York, and there was some other way that he was able to get me some grant money. So we were actually able to stretch that original $5,000 that was coming from the Brenneman Trust. We were able to stretch that with some extra money.
Now we have to stop just for a couple of seconds.
Sure.
Because since this is a historical program.
Yes, sir.
And it will be viewed maybe 50 years or 100 years from now. Tell us.
Only if they keep putting it onto new formats, because
That's
these things
true.
are going to die.
Well, not the one that we're going to put it on for today, however.
Okay.
Tell us about the Brenneman Trust. Who were the Brennemans in Wadsworth, and what was the trust?
You're in a better position than I am on
Okay,
that one.
I'll be very happy to share that.
Thank
Glenn
you.
Brenneman and his wife gave a substantial amount of money to music organizations. As a matter of fact, I think they have a conservatory named after them in Heidelberg.
Oh, interesting.
Clara Brenneman was his wife. Their daughter, they have one daughter, and she still lives in Wadsworth. Excuse me. The Brenneman Trust then gave money to the library. This had to be about 30 years ago or so, 25 to 30 years ago. Does that sound right?
Oh, if I started in 88, 89 or 90.
Yeah. So
89.
Okay, about 20 years ago. 20 years they gave money to the library, and incidentally, their daughter's name is Mary, and she is married to. I and I know his name. Just a second,
Yeah.
it'll come up. It'll come to me in a second.
Sure.
This is what happens
Because
when
I feel as though I know it too, and
it'll
it's
come
been
to,
too many years since I've been in the fund. Yes,
Friedley.
exactly.
Mary
That's
Friedley.
right.
Mary Friedley.
That's right. Yep.
Mark Friedley, unfortunately, is deceased. But they gave money to music organizations, and I'm not positive that this was given to the library just for anything that your librarian wanted to do. I think it was for music, but I could be wrong.
I'm not sure.
But anyway, they did that. So the Brenneman Trust and the Brenneman's Pharmacy was a pharmacy here in Wadsworth.
Oh, okay.
So 50 years from now, we'll know who the Brennemans
Oh,
were.
good. Thank you.
Good.
Well, we had that right now.
Right.
Okay. As soon as you said Friedley, I remember because the letters that we would send explain what we were going to do went to Mark Friedley.
Right.
So I
Mark
remember
Friedley
that
was,
now.
I think, he was the the trustee of the fund or whatever.
So the concerts, I mean, I was asked this morning, I did my exit interview today at the library, and I was asked this morning, what the satisfactions were of the job, and certainly I point to that concert series because I produced 21 years of them. And we weren't doing 12 concerts every year. I mean, gradually, after about 5 years, the Brennemans wanted to move on to another project, and so the library board decided that they would fund it, but we cut down on how many we were doing. And by the time the money crunch came in about 2008, 2009, when we had to cancel the concerts, we were down to 4 a year. But our original goal was wintertime, to have something for people to do in the wintertime, that the concerts were free, that the concerts were eclectic. We would try all different kinds of things. And to me, some of the more exciting things we did, I mean, everything, I loved it all. I loved it all. We would have string quartets. We would have flute and harp, flute and guitar. We had a percussion ensemble, a student percussion ensemble, come one time from Baldwin Wallace, with percussion instruments and music with nothing but percussion that I've never heard before. Wonderful, wonderful. Had a man from Fairview Park area who was also percussion, and he brought many Oriental and whole world type instruments that we'd never seen before. I've had country bands, I had dance bands, and then I had what I've come to call the library's house band, which at the time was, what were they called? Zydeco? I've forgotten their original name. But because they've had several permutations over the years, just different groupings and, ebb and flow. But they're a Zydeco band out of Akron, and they still perform. I would have them at the concerts on a regular basis. You may or may not remember that when we broke ground in 2001 for the current, most recent addition to the library, you were mayor at the time, and we had you as one of the speakers at the groundbreaking. We had them for the entertainment.
I remember that.
My house band. We had them play on our grand opening day in 2003. They've been back a couple times since then, but I always think the library's got a house band and they play Zydeco.
Now, while we're talking about the various additions to the library, we need to stop again
and do the history.
of
Okay.
it. When you first came to the library, what was the footprint of the library at the time?
When I first walked in the door, they were still under construction with the addition that was finished in 1987.
And what was the basic one? The house was no longer there.
The
right?
house was gone. Yeah.
The lighter house was gone.
The lighter house was gone. The 1957 building was on site, and then the addition that I was first familiar with, the one in 87, had a parking lot. There must have been the gas station had been taken away.
That's right.
And there was a parking lot at the
Sam
very
Welty's
corner.
gas station.
Pardon me?
Sam Welty's gas station.
Okay.
The Gulf Station.
Gulf Station. It was immediately on the corner of Lyman and Broad. And that what had been the gas station property became the parking lot for the current building as we see it today. So there's the original 57 building that was built after the lighter house was raised. The 1987 addition, which brought the children's department up from the basement. among other things,
Right.
and created that large meeting room space at the front of the building. And then the current one that was opened in 2003, which includes the second story, took up the parking lot, basically took up the former
That's
parking
right.
lot.
So you've been there
Included.
through 3 footprints, as it were.
I was never in the first one.
Oh,
I
you
was
were
never
never
in the
in-
57
Oh,
building.
you were never in the 57 building, okay. Well, before the 57 building, there was a house
The
there.
house.
It was a brown house, and it was very ornate and so forth.
Yeah.
It was the lighter house that was given by Ella Everhard, and the name still bears
Correct. It's the legal name of the
the
library.
the name of
It's
the
the Ella
library.
M. Everhard Public Library, legally.
And Ella Everhard was married to Dr. Everhard, who was Nathan Everhard, who was a dentist.
Yes.
He was born in on Eastern Road in Wadsworth. As a matter of fact, he died in 1919, and she lived beyond that.
Quite a while.
Well, she gave the library in 1925, I believe, 1925. Then, for many, many years, that was the library, and they had the upper 2 rooms, the upper story rooms were dedicated to meetings rooms for the women's groups.
Correct.
And I can still remember the librarian making sure that a person who was not a female would never go up those steps. And you can be assured that many of us try to go up those steps, many,
Just
many
to
times.
see what
and
it
are
was all
grabbed
about.
immediately, and you don't go up those steps. That's for the women's group. I did go up there one time, however.
Oh, did you?
I did. As an adult, I went up there.
Were
and
you invited?
I was invited.
There
to
you
up
go.
there. I was oh, you better believe I was invited to go up there. And there's a story about the library and the lighter house, and I think that it bears repeating. I think I might have
Okay.
repeated it once before, where we have a person in Wadsworth, and I don't think he would care if I mentioned his name, but I'm not going to mention it right this very second.
Okay.
Who pretended to go to the library to do some investigating of what the back room was. Was completely related to Wadsworth history, Indian artifacts, and so forth and so on,
okay.
which are now in the Medina Historical
They're
House.
in a smart house in Medina, yeah.
Smart House Medina. So, but however, a hidden agenda was that they were going to do something that night. So they went there and they opened the lock of one of the windows. The following day, this one person came in, or the boys came in, and they took one of the skulls, or one of the Indian skulls, or I don't know if it was an Indian or not, but it was a skull. They took it out because they were able to get into the window and just reached in, picked it up. They didn't have to enter into the library, they just picked it up. And they went around the corner to the corner of Lyman Street and Maple Street.
Maple.
And there was a very precious little old lady who lived there, and she used to go into her garden every day, and she would dig around her flowers and so forth. They buried it underneath. So when she started digging the following day, she went in there and she heard something clicking against her shovel. So she looked and looked, and then she picked it up, and it was a skull. Well, she almost died
Yes.
on the spot, and she ran across the lots to Tommy Lucas, who was the chief of police at the time.
Okay.
And Tommy Lucas took a look at it, picked up the telephone, called this boy's father, and he said, "Where is your son?" And his son said, or the father said he was at home. He went to his home, and he said, "Did you do this?" And he said, "Yes, I did."
Yeah.
To which his father once said, "Before you're 17, you're going to hang." Wonderful, wonderful. The person has been a very successful person all of his life. He's an outstanding artist. He was one of the artists for the National Geographic.
Oh.
Great family, great
Yeah,
family.
yeah.
But that's the story that we have to tell for the
Oh.
library. Now, the lighter house was then destroyed, not destroyed, it
Well,
was
it was
actually taken
razed.
down, raised in 1957, and they built the first library. Then you came there when the second one,
Was just
the second edition
being
was
completed.
completed. So footprint number 1 you didn't
No.
didn't work with, and footprint number 2 you were there,
I got 2
and
and
foot
3.
number 3 you were there. Now in 2001,
Okay.
when you dedicated the library,
When we broke ground.
when you broke ground of the library, tell us about that special program that you had as far as some other people from Medina being involved with the program. And we're going to have to hurry along with some of these stories, but
Okay, we'll talk faster. I think I know to what you're referring.
We
I'll
had-
just describe that day. Groundbreaking day.
Groundbreaking day.
Day. We had the Zydeco band, and we had our fine mayor of Wadsworth at the time, and we had the architectural renderings for what we were going to build
Right.
on that spot. And then I had taken it into my mind that I wanted to have reenactors portray early Wadsworth pioneers.
That is correct.
And I don't remember where I found a surrey with the fringe on top, but I managed to find somebody who had a horse and carriage
Right.
to bring them onto the site. And I had two people from the Medina Showbiz Company.
Right.
In fact, Barbara Bach recently died. Did you know that? Did you see her obituary?
No, I did not.
Well, she was in costume, and she portrayed Ella M. Everhard. And then, I wish I could remember his name, one of the other gentlemen from the Medina Showbiz Company portrayed Judge Franklin Brown.
Judge Franklin Brown.
And now it's your turn again, because I know you want to talk about who Franklin Brown was.
Well, what really impressed me,
Okay.
and with no offense, negatively,
Oh dear.
was that you did not choose anybody from Wadsworth to do Reverend Brown, nor Ella Everhard, and we had two of the most beautiful people in the world who could have done that.
Well, what did I know at the time? You know, I don't know. Well, I'll say to you in defense and in response is that the architects told me that they had that was the most fascinating groundbreaking they'd ever seen.
It was an outstanding groundbreaking.
Yeah.
I can, as a matter of fact, typically when we had ribbon cuttings and things of this nature, groundbreakings, I mean, they're perfectly okay, but they're just completely boring because you cut the ribbon.
I clearly had the least boring groundbreaking ever.
You cut the ribbon, they clap,
Yeah.
and you go away.
Yeah.
But this was actually a real program.
Because then both of those characters spoke. We had put a script together for both of them, and both of them spoke in the person of Ella Everhard and Judge Brown.
That's right, exactly. Now, tied to that also, we would like to have your impression of what, well, I shouldn't say your impression, because it was not your impression, it was what you actually did. When the library is being built, tell us a little bit about some of the problems that is the 2003 or 2001.
I know. Well, groundbreaking 1, dedication in 3.
Right,
that one.
And 3.
The one we're in now.
The one that you're in right now. Tell us about some of the problems that we had with reference to.
I know where you're going.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, pretty sure I know where you're going on that one. Well, first of all, I tell a story that you may not be aware of. The morning of September 11th,
Right.
I was outside with a video camera, and I was photographing the demolition of what had been the lobby entrance off the parking lot of the old building.
Okay.
And Jackie,
that's one of the significant things I wanted to bring
it
up.
is. And Jackie Cook, who was with the Friends at that time and who did book sorting for the book sales, and Jackie's also no longer with us. Jackie came walking past me on the sidewalk, and she said, "Have you been out here for long?" It was maybe 8:45, 10:50, something like that. She said, "Have you been out here for long?" And I said, "No, not terribly long." And she said, "Well, you probably didn't hear about the plane that hit the World Trade Center in New York." And I said, "No, hadn't heard it. Was thinking Cessna." I mean, I was thinking, I think what everybody else was thinking when they first heard the story is that it was a small private plane that, had an accident. And so I've never forgotten what day we were tearing down that part of the building because, while we were watching, we set up a television then and we cast it onto a screen so anybody could come in the meeting room and watch the news footage and everything, and we all kind of gathered around and for us it was really bizarre in that true sense of the word that while we were watching the towers fall, we had live sound effects because the shovel was grabbing and pulling parts of this building away. It was truly
eerie.
Very eerie, extremely
eerie.
Extremely eerie. So I've never forgotten where I was when I found out about. I've never forgotten.
I wanted you to tell that story.
Now you want the other one.
Yeah, the other story.
The other one. Okay, this is a true fact. So we were digging for the basement, and at some point during the digging of the basement, they saw tendrils of smoke coming up, and the dirt was on fire. And what was discovered, and see, I don't remember all the details, but what was discovered is that as they were digging for the basement that's under the footprint now, under what had been the parking lot, they were hitting upon benzene that had been left behind in the dirt when the gasoline tanks had been pulled for the gas station. There had been a leak. The tanks had either leaked prior to being pulled out or they leaked in the process of being pulled out, but the remaining chemical was benzene. And so we had dirt on fire, you know, which I guess goes along with the river in Cleveland.
That's
so,
right.
Anyway, what that meant then ultimately was we had to find some place that would take the soil. They had to find an EPA approved dump that would take that soil, that tainted soil.
Which was not inexpensive.
Which was not inexpensive. And we ended up with a bigger basement because we had to keep digging until we got to clean soil. We had to keep digging.
That's right.
Now this would have been eastbound toward Lyman Street. We ended up digging further toward the street than was originally
As a matter
planned.
of fact, you had to get a special zoning permit.
That wouldn't surprise me because we were closer to Lyman than we should have been.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
Now there's another story that probably.
Well, I'm glad I remember these.
Well, this one is not advertised, but I think it's good for us to be able to bring it out for the historical value of it.
Okay.
After the building was completely finished,
Yes.
and about November, December, something like that.
Actually, we did our dedication on March 9th of 2003.
2003.
We dedicated
Okay,
it.
well, I know it was cold weather.
March could have been.
Yeah,
sure.
cold weather, right.
Uh-huh.
One day I was sitting in my office, in the mayor's office, and the city engineer, who's now the city engineer,
Okay.
came up to me and he said, "We have made a very significant discovery." I said, "What is that?" He said, "We have found the original post for the center of town on the square, and it's 4 feet north of where we thought it was." Now, this, as far as I was concerned, not really earth-shaking.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, is there a significance to what you're telling me?" Because he was all, almost grinning and almost effusive with his telling me this. I said, "Yes, that means that everything north of the East Park, 4 feet of which was north of the East Park, belongs to the city.
Okay.
And you have a drugstore there, and you have other stores there, and the new library is now 4 feet onto the street, and it doesn't belong to them."
I never heard this.
Well, I never told it to
I never heard this.
So
which
said,
4 feet of the library doesn't belong to the library?
The
Lyman, that Lyman?
No, on Broad Street.
On Broad?
On Broad Street, because the post was 4 feet beyond.
Huh.
So we went into conversations with the legal department and so forth and so on, and I think it was decided that they would just forget about it.
Well, that's always the best.
In 200 years, no one's going to care. No one care, and no one's going to make you.
But think when that mistake was made, though, too, because that was made
many years.
Many. Yeah, I mean that wasn't with the 2003 construction. That was
no. Had nothing to do with the 2003 construction.
Oh, that's
At the
funny.
same time, we found out that what we used as a parking lot in front of what is now the Central Intermediate School was school property. So the school gave us that property as well.
Well, it's good everybody played nicely.
Oh,
It's like the 2 inches or 3 inches of concrete at my house, in my driveway, that are actually on my neighbor's side.
Right.
We found that out when we had the lot surveyed. So I understand how these things happen.
Now we're going to run out of time.
We
here
are.
now.
So ask your next question.
We'll have
I'll talk fast.
I have several more questions.
Okay.
What specific kinds of things do you remember as being pivotal in making the library what it is today, as it relates probably to marketing? And I can help
As it
you.
relates to marketing?
Let's start with Elegram.
Well, the loss of that was pivotal, wasn't it? It's coming back. Did you know?
No, I did not
All right,
know that.
I'll share that here in a second. When I got here, and whatever year we decided that was, 88, 89, whatever year I started actually having office time and working with the newsletter and that kind of thing. It was already a document. There was already a newsletter that went out into the community. And so I just kind of stepped in and did writing and editing and story interviews and that kind of thing, and worked with someone on staff who did the layout and everything. And the Elegram, golly, how many issues had we done by the time we had to fold it? The Elegram was remodeled. You know, we came up with a different format for
completely.
it to go with the new building in 2003, and it became a large fold-out tabloid thing. Actually, we got the idea from the City of Brunswick. They had one the same size and shape, so I said I like that. A lot of white space to work with and everything. With the 2008-2009 approximately, when the state funding to libraries was cut by 30%, the Elegram was one of the things that went because that 6 times a year. I believe we were still doing 6 at that time, cost $20,000 a year to produce, print, and mail. And it was decided that money was better spent in other ways. But we've certainly been aware over the years, in the 6 years, 7 years since then, how much of a loss that was in terms of communicating with the community. And we've recently reinstated it. Daniel Slife, the new director, has reinstated it. We did send out an abbreviated summer calendar of events, and that's how it's not going to be called the Elegram. It's going to be called Wadsworth Public Library. It's not calendar of events. Oh Lord, now I've forgotten what we're calling it. I guess I'm not going to be doing the next one. I've forgotten. But it's going to be more of a magazine format, and it'll have some in-depth stories about some of the different programs. It'll have information from Daniel. It may have something on the Friends and Foundation, but it will be mailed to every household in the service area. And right away, when that summer one was delivered to households on the 1st of July, that morning, that next work morning, we had like half a dozen telephone calls.
Absolutely. That was
people who were interested in the program.
It was pivotal.
So, you know, while we did have an electronic, and we still do have an electronic e-newsletter that we send out through a company called Constant Contact. We still have that. We still had posters. We still had press releases in the paper. It was never what the newsletter was, and the proof was last week's result.
You have something else that you started, and right today you're sitting on the other side of what you typically do.
I am. I think I'm in my 8th or 9th year, and I didn't have a chance to count up my programs, and the folks in the booth can probably do it for me, but I'm in my 8th or 9th year.
Tell us
the
about
libraries
that. How did that start?
How'd that start?
Yes.
You know, I think it was something that Alan Nichols wanted. He wanted us to do more with television. And Wadsworth is absolutely blessed. Of the 3 major communities, Wadsworth was the first one doing local access cable, locally produced programming in Medina County. In fact, the county seat, Medina, was last of the 3 major cities. And Wadsworth, this was something to be reckoned with, and this was one more marketing opportunity for the library to put itself out into the community and talk about what we do and what we have and that kind of thing. So originally we would shoot 3 shows at a time, get them done, and then we didn't have to come back for a while.
Put them in the can.
And there were 2 of us. And then when my colleague went on maternity leave and chose not to come back.
And who was that?
Val Ott.
Val Ott.
She was head of reference. She chose not to come back, then it was mine. And I shoot by the month because I can't think 3 months ahead. I have too many other things I was trying to do. So I have technically shot my last show as the host of In Good Company. That was what we called it. It was from a quote by Harriet Beecher Stowe's father, something about a book being good company.
Yes, it'll come to me in a second also.
John? I can't think of his name.
No, can't think of it, but I know who you're talking about.
But that's who it was. And we used that quote on our opening slide, and that was always my sign-off. You know, in the meantime, please remember that a book is always good company. But over the years, I've had some fascinating programs, and every December I would do a cooking show. I would demonstrate some kind of a food thing for the holidays. That was always a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
Now you mentioned another librarian, A minute ago, we started with the librarian with whom you started. Now,
Valerie Ott.
go through the progression of librarians.
Ooh, in reference?
No. The librarians with who were the regular librarians for the head of the library.
Oh, directors?
Directors.
Mm-hmm. In the time that I have been in Wadsworth, it was Eileen Flowers.
Okay, number one.
Pam Hickson Stevenson.
Who's now with the Akron Public Library.
She's the assistant director at Akron Summit County Public Library.
And
Alan Nichols. He's now the executive director of the Akron Bar Association. And Daniel Slife. So Daniel's been with us since early October of 2013.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, what are some of the big changes that came to the library from the time that you started until the present time? And when I'm talking about big changes, we have only a few minutes. But when I'm talking about big changes, for instance, we had a whole series of programs that were dedicated to children, a whole series of programs dedicated to teens, and so forth. Different kinds of programs other than book reading. Chess clubs and things.
Chess clubs, is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Right.
Because I had a different answer.
Okay, go ahead with your answer.
When I first got here, I was typing press releases on an IBM Selectric.
Okay.
Technology, and anybody in public libraries will tell you exactly that. The many ways that technology has played a role in changing libraries, and yet in many ways libraries remain the same. Mm-hmm. But I watched the card catalog go out in Wadsworth.
Okay, that's the kind of thing that
I watched that go out. We sold that to a woman from Washington, D.C. who was visually impaired, and she wanted to use it to store her cassettes. People would read books for her onto cassette, and she bought it and had it shipped to Washington for her. Email, the computer catalog, the ability to, the self-check machines. In fact, those are even more recent than some of the early stuff.
What about
doing layout on a computer instead of with a paste jar and on paper? You name it.
What about the big program, like the one that's right at the front of the library? When you first came, did you have a room dedicated to computers?
Absolutely not. No, we didn't even have computers.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The different kinds of things which are not
absolutely.
quote book.
Right. And we had LP records when I got there. Mm-hmm. Those are gone. We have CDs. We have DVDs. We have books on CD. Mm-hmm. We have the playaways, which are those self-contained recorded books, and the e-books that are available now through the library's website. None of that. All of that's new. All of that.
Now let's go back to the personal again. What are the personal feelings that you have had, pro and con, in the library?
Uh-huh.
And I know that one of the very difficult feelings that you had occurred when the state legislature took away
Absolutely.
30 to 50%
Absolutely.
of your. But what are some of the other kinds of things that were both hurtful and very stimulating?
Well, I'll expand on that real quickly because we really are coming down there. In all the years that I've worked in libraries, and if you count my time in Medina and the 10 years I freelanced at Wadsworth before I was actually hired, so my 26 years in Wadsworth is,
36,
I've been in public libraries 35 years.
35 years.
I had never seen layoffs till 2009.
Wow.
I had never seen layoffs in libraries. Libraries were safe. I had never seen anything like it. And the fear and the morale, and I'd never seen anything like it. So, scary stuff. I love to be able to point to the fact that we're about to do our 20th or 21st Candidates Forum in the fall. I will not be here to produce it, but it's the only one I haven't. And we have a reputation, the library has a reputation for the quality of the Candidates Forum that we put together. The candidates have told us that over the years. We run a tight ship, and you've been there for plenty of them. You know how we run things.
Well, if we have the name Janet Griffing and tight ship, they're synonymous.
Yeah, there's pretty much, because yeah, I'm like that.
You don't take too much from anyone.
No. I have delighted in working with our foundation and our friends group. The foundation's 5K race, I knew nothing about how to do a race, and I could now, I don't mean run as in I mean run as in produce.
Right.
I can do one now.
Now, how about very quickly, tell us about the 3 or 4 or 5 campaigns that you've had to put together.
I've had the experience of doing levy and bond campaigns. I've worked with you. This last one, we spent a lot of time together, you and I.
We bonded.
We bonded over the bond issue. Yeah, no, that was an operating levy, but yeah, we bonded over the. So yeah, I've had a lot of campaign experience too. But I'm going to tell you something that a lot of people don't know.
What's that?
And we have time to tell it.
Go ahead.
Are you aware of all those bricks in the front lobby that have people's names
Yes,
engraved
I
on
am.
them? You have quite a handful, because you have yourself and you've got some of your children, and you've got 5 or 6 bricks.
Right.
Okay. Those bricks were engraved at Midwest Engraving right here in Wadsworth. They get contracts from all over the country, but they are right here. They were in Bergie, and I don't know if they are still on West Bergie. So we had the opportunity to check all those bricks, proofread all those bricks before they were installed. So that was my job. I went down to the brickyard with a list of all the donors, and there are like 107 or something, I think. And I proofread all the bricks and turned back the ones that had errors or that, okay, so I put those bricks away. Then it came the day to install those bricks. And family groups like your own wanted to be on the wall as a group. So I had written out a schematic for the order in which the bricks were to be laid, beginning at the bottom of the wall and going up, and then the extra ones around the corner in the vestibule. And the bricklet masons said, well, we're not going to follow this. Somebody has to stand here and put these bricks in order. I helped lay those bricks. I stood there with the masons that whole day with my hard hat on and laid the bricks out in the order they were in the schematic, so they could just pick them up and put them in the wall.
Janet, this has been very, very interesting, but we are coming to the very end,
know.
and we have only a couple seconds left.
Okay.
Whatever you want to say now for the next 37 seconds.
Whatever I want to say now, I'm going to miss this community.
We will miss you.
I'm going to miss the friends I've made in the community. Where's my camera? There it is. I'm going to miss the friends I've made in the community. Bob Thurber, I have known Bob Thurber forever. I knew him in Medina when he had the jewelry store. I'm going to miss the chamber people, the meetings of downtown Wadsworth. I'm going to miss the fact that I know one of the former mayors. I'm going to miss the fact that I could run into Robin at Walmart and have a chat with the mayor. My colleagues, certainly my colleagues.
And our final word from me, we will miss you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being on the program today.
Thank you.